The Akoma
It's Nawasha.
and Moncho, Akoma House Initiative, the art and science of Black love culture, culturally based counseling and consulting, and the Black Love School.
And today we are coming to you to talk about the three most important pivotal areas that we see as counselors, as Black people, as citizens of the planet. These are the three things that we are challenged with right now that affect our relationships in multiple ways.
Yeah, and I think these are also the three pillars of the work that we do. And so we want to clarify for people who have been asking about a lot of different details about what we do and how we do it and how it's unique and different from what anybody else who's in this industry does. And for us, it's really simple. It's straightforward. There are three pillars that we focus on. And those pillars are psychological reparation, relationship education, and then cultural initiation. So it's a lot of shun going on. It's a lot of shun rhyming. But we want to just take a couple of minutes and break those down briefly.
Yes.
So first, psychological reparation.
Healing.
Yes.
Right? We all need healing. So we're talking about psychological healing, but there are challenges that we have when it comes to relationships that are based on our thought processes, our experiences, our caregiving. So these are the things that we need healing from, and we have not restored ourselves fully from oppression, enslavement, all of the things that are brutalizing our relationships. We have been left to just get over it and move on and keep it moving. And there is an aspect of strength in keeping it moving, but what happens is there's this issue permeating,
residual,
right? It's exactly a residual challenge that is unaddressed. So this is the first thing that we absolutely need to understand, is that there's an element to our psychological healing that can't be addressed out just through the oppression.
Right.
So this is where the psychological healing for Black people can't be just painted black theories.
Right.
It really has to be something that is going to be honest, going to be complete, and going to use everything that we have at our disposal, which is the widest spectrum of healing that exists.
Right. And I think, the thing that is important to note is that relationships are going to bring a certain level of challenge, whatever kind of relationship it is. And without the normalcy, without making healing a part of the normalcy. There's a lot of talk out there about healing right now. A lot of people are talking about self-care and healing time and reset. And all of that is good on a micro level, but it needs to be applied to us as a group in a macro level, because through our ma'afa, we've suffered many systemic damages or many systemic wounds to our collective body. And so as a result, the way we're trying to get down and relate to one another is very, very damaged, especially when conflict arises, which conflict does arise in all of our relationships. And it's a good thing. It's serving to push us to higher levels and develop skills that are latent and unused. But the way it's turning out is that when you have conflicts on top of trauma, the conflict becomes an igniter of a wellspring of pain. And so a lot of times in our relationships, we are seeing a whole bunch of pain being unleashed with a conflict that doesn't seem to match the pain. Or in other words, the conflict seems to be registering like a level 2 on the Richter scale, but the pain unleashed is registering like a 25. And so that's very off-putting and very destructive to the progression of our relationship. So in our work, that first pillar is psychological reparation. And my experience is this, my final thought: you can't even hear a person. You can't even conceptualize if you're getting good information or good strategy if you're in a whole bunch of pain. It's like walking up to a person, kicking them in the stomach, and then trying to have a conversation about the weather. They're not going to respond about the weather because they're nursing the wound, the pain of the kick in the stomach. And it's not until they can that pain subsides, or that wave of pain goes through, that they can even engage. And when they stand up, for certain, they're not going to be talking about the weather because you kicked them in the stomach. They're going to be talking about, you getting kicked. So definitely psychological reparation has to be the first step of effective work.
And we want to know, as we say these steps and these pillars that we work with, we want to know which of these you've already implemented into your life. So are you already going to counseling? Do you already have a self-care plan? Have you been thinking about what you think? Like this idea of really our metacognition is so important because we're so much on auto.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So now the second pillar is relationship education. And this one, I think it's pretty straightforward. We don't learn about what a relationship is in an intentional way, and we don't have the education that goes into having successful relationships. So unlike a lot of other areas in our life, even when it's superficial, we tend to learn a little bit about nutrition, a little bit about biology. We absolutely have to learn if we're going to school and if we're going on to do anything professional. We're going to just continue that educational process. Even things that we are taught from our family can be very intentional, like how to brush your teeth, how to take a shower, how to do the laundry, how to drive a car. And so we have a lot of acceptance that we need to be educated, except when it comes to relationships. So as an adult, there isn't something that you're going to go into without getting a training. Even a crash course, even the worst places that don't have the best onboarding will at least tell you, here's the bathroom, here's this, here's that.
Right.
And now go get started. In relationships, we just have a conditioning, which is antithetical to a successful relationship. So by conditioning, I mean movies, fairy tales, our parents, our neighbors. The challenge with that is that we're absorbing those lessons as children without proper context. So unlike all the areas that I said, as a child, you can see someone doing the dishes, driving a car, and you'll observe that hundreds and thousands of times. When it's time for you to actually drive the car, though, someone's very explicit on what you can do, what you can't do, and that you actually need a license to drive the car. In relationships, we're still observing those hundreds and thousands of times, but when we get ready for the relationship, we often get abbreviated advice that's based on our parents' trauma, like don't get pregnant, make sure you communicate. But it's nowhere near as explicit as some of the other things that we've been taught. So this is a major pillar for us, because if you know how to do some things, really the reason why you do it and how to do it, or the art and the science, you will be able to approach relationships with a lot more confidence and with a higher level of skill set. So that means that even with the conflicts, there's a way to get out of them. Even with the communication, there's a time to talk. There's a style to speak to a man and to a woman, and those things are very important. If we knew that, we'd have a lot less challenge, conflict, and heartbreak.
Yeah, I would say that relationship education is simply the best practices for how to prepare for love, how to select a mate, how to properly court, how to communicate in 3 dimensions, how to harmonize styles, how to resolve conflicts, how to grow together so that you don't grow apart, and how to legacy plan and prepare for children and your impact after your physical life. All of these things in the life cycle of any relationship or any person's lives are a series of skills. And relationship education is giving you the best practices from a culturally relevant perspective on what those things are. Because make no mistake, they are different for Black people, especially Black people here in the Western world. So it is important to understand relationship education, and that just because you have love, which is a very foundational and important piece, the emotional aspect of love, because there's more to love than just the emotional aspect. But the emotional aspect for love is like the gas in the car, as we say often. But the gas is not knowing how to drive, knowing how to be offensive, or when to be offensive and when to be defensive, and knowing the street signs and knowing how to operate a stick shift, or all the various different things that you have to know to
Driving in
operate a
different
car,
weather,
right? To drive in different weather, different terrain, how to drive when you're lost, how to be aware of other drivers and the street signs that are painted on the street, double lines, hash lines, or the street signs that are erected coming up out of the ground telling you what to do. And all of these things are the composite of these things make you a good driver. Your proficiency at the composite of all of these things make you a good driver. But we think I'm going to drive well because I'm gassed up. And that gas is that emotional love. And so it's important, but it's not complete. And so we want to give relationship education that is complete in those 10, 11 things that I listed, from getting ready to love all the way to the end of preparing your love legacy for generations to come.
And then the final pillar,
number 3,
is cultural initiation.
Yes.
So this is something that is worthy of its own video,
Yes,
just like
absolutely.
the other two. But it's very important to return to indigenous Black practices. So this is in your thoughts, in your speech, in your action. It's extremely important for us to align with a cultural system. And the challenge, I think, especially for Black people in the diaspora and in colonized places and dealing with oppression, is that there's a lot to grasp onto when you have the history of Black people. When you have the history of Blackness in the world, there's a lot of time that really goes over. There's a lot of places that really goes over. And we sometimes confuse culture with the affects of culture, the representation of culture. So when we are disconnected, we will align and think that culture is our diet and our food and our language and our music and our dress. But truthfully, culture is your mindset. It's where your values come from, where your beliefs come from. And those values and beliefs decide what you eat and how you're going to eat and how you're going to dress and how to play the music and what to play the music out of, and makes your language. So the things that we look at sometimes that are culture, no matter which philosophy we're attaching ourselves to, are the affects of culture. And in many times we're looking at remnants of culture instead of us thinking about the universal Black consciousness and the universal Black culture, which then stems and breaks off like a tree, right, into many branches and many leaves. So it's so important for us to have cultural initiation, because we are indoctrinated, and I would say, in a way, initiated into an oppressive culture where we continue to oppress ourselves. And this is one of the major challenges in relationships, is we're hurting ourselves. Even with the gas, we have to know how to refuel, right? And how to gas up again and again and again in any kind of relationship. And if we only know the oppressive culture, we only have references for being romantic, then we are not going to be able to have a long-term success in relationships. We're not going to be able to build a legacy, and we are not going to be fulfilled. Even if we linger in a relationship that is not making us happy, that's also leaving a legacy for what our children know to accept.
Right. I think cultural initiation is the process of unlocking the latent God that exists within you. In our cultural legacy, we are taught that at conception, God is supplanted in the living being, and you become a full living being at conception because your ancestral memory is deposited. So the process of initiation is unlike any other kind of educational experience, because it is tapping into the unconscious mind, which is different than the conscious or the subconscious mind. The unconscious mind is that part of you that goes eons beyond your physical life, before and after. The eternal part of yourself that has no beginning and no ending. That part of you that is not about you, but is of you. And meaning that it's not about the trajectory of your individual life, but it is of the eternal part of yourself that has always been and always will be. So that educational process is very unique and different than anything that's popular in the modern world. So it is important for Black people to get cultural initiation if you are to master yourself and you are to master the world that you are the parent people of, that you are the maker, creator, and owner of. And that sounds very presumptuous or delusional to many people, but it's actually a truth. And through initiation, you can find very clearly that it is true. That's not everybody's position. And so very many people have an aversion to even believing such could be the fact, but it is actually 100% true. And in our work, we're guiding our clients and those that entrust us with cultural initiation to begin to understand that there is a whole educational process outside of anything we're being taught in the modern Western world, from K to PhD, triple PhDs. There is a body of information that is much more expansive and much more powerful. So, and that's in all of the disciplines, education, economics, entertainment, fashion, food, labor law, politics, religion, sex and war, health, all of them. It's a different body of knowledge out there, and cultural initiation is the way to go. For the Black person of the new millennium that is coming upon us, and the new world that is coming rapidly, initiation is the way to have mastery, and this is what we're offering in our work. So these three pillars, psychological reparation, relationship education, and cultural initiation, make up the body of the focus of the Akoma House Initiative moving forward in all of our programs, in all of our memberships: the Black Love School, Akoma King, Akoma Queen, the Rites of Passage, and the individual work we do. This is the triad. This is the holy trinity of our work that you're going to receive. And so we welcome you to get deeper. And what would we like you to do?
Well, drop in the comments what you've already done. So have you done what kind of healing have you done? You probably have. If you're listening to us, you wouldn't be looking for something like this. What relationship education have you sought, or what do you think is missing in our relationship education? And then what kinds of cultural initiation have you done? How are you looking to remember yourself? So put yourself back together culturally. Sometimes people are doing DNA tests just to find out where they are from, parts of where they're from, to attach to that culture, right? So there's always a entrance point, and we want to know what that is because we want to know more about you. We're going to talk about those three things for ourselves in another video, but drop in the comments what you've already done for your psychological reparation, relationship education, or cultural initiation. And drop in the comments whatever you think is missing or has been difficult about getting those three things.
So we look forward to serving you. And as always, until we get to touch and feel individually, we will greet you collectively in peace in the universal words of Black love and say,
Ni Akoma.
Ni Akoma.